Greg Page and Nate Northington were preparing for the 1967 season opener in Indiana on September 23rd, when they would become the first African Americans to compete for an SEC institution. They were in the middle of a practice on August 22nd, 1967, just 3 days after Page's 19th birthday. They were conducting what was known as a pursuit drill when the unthinkable happened.
Apparently, right as he butted the ball carrier, people ran into the back of him, and it must have snapped his neck. A very freak accident. And when everybody parted to go back to their positions and go again, Greg was still on the ground.
All the defense swarmed, what we call swarming the ball. And someone got there right after Greg got there, and obviously a helmet went into his back and spine.
When they got up, Page didn't get up. He was paralyzed from the neck down. And nobody that's been there has ever really been able to say exactly what happened. It was just a fluke. A fluke of fate to the Golden Boy.
And when they put him on the stretcher and carried him off the field, that's when I knew it was Greg, because I saw his skin of his arm hanging off the side of the stretcher as they were taking him off the field. And sadly to say, that was the last time I ever saw him.
38 days later, on September 29, 1967, Greg Page died. The next day, UK was scheduled to play its home opener against Ole Miss. The players were distraught, and the university considered canceling the game. After hearing Page's father tell them that Greg would want them to forge ahead, the Wildcats played that day and lost a 26-13 decision to the Rebels. There was a memorial service at Stoll Field the day after the game, and on October 5th, Page's 27 sophomore teammates were transported by bus to the funeral in Middlesboro. The casket was closed. With the exception of Northington, Bradshaw never allowed any of the other players to see Page while he was in the hospital. Secondly, after attending Page's funeral, the players returned to Lexington and were forced to take part in a brutal 3-hour practice. 3 players quit the team that night, including 2 starters.
If I could see Coach Bradshaw today, and he's passed away as well, I would ask him 2 questions. 1, why didn't you let us see Greg before he died, the ones that were close to him? And 2, why did you have the kind of practice that you had when we returned from the funeral that night?
Bradshaw visited Page and spent time with his family during the ordeal, but Shannon Ragland, author of the book The Thin 30 that detailed UK's infamous 1962 season, said Bradshaw probably didn't know how to cope with such a tragedy.
I think he would have been saddened, but Bradshaw was a guy who had a theme for his life. He lived, his entire life was about football. Everything else was secondary to football. His family, his wife, everything that he did was football.
Northington was now without his friend, his sidekick who he thought would be with him during the difficult journey. And without Page, the burden got that much heavier for Northington. After the Ole Miss game, UK traveled to Auburn and was pounded 48-7 by the Tigers. But the problems went much further than the scoreboard. Life on the road in the SEC was indeed tough on black players at that time. Hackett recalled the apprehension he and Houston Hogg felt before their first road trip to Ole Miss in 1968.
I remember very vividly a friend of ours who was a African-American student, Colleen Warren, sent us a card saying she had drawn a picture of a noose, of a dog, and a water hose, and saying, beware of these things when you go south.
Northington says he doesn't remember hearing any heckling from the Auburn fans, but others do.
The players didn't abuse Nat on the field. It was the fans and even some of the people hanging around the sidelines. All the state troopers that were lining the field, and there seemed to be more of them that game than most, had Confederate flags, little Confederate flags stuck in their holsters. And we heard, the N-word over and over and over and over again. Put Leroy in, let's kill Leroy.
Northington started missing classes due to his depression over the Page ordeal. And when the UK assistant coach threatened to suspend the meal money portion of his scholarship as punishment, that was the final straw. Nate Northington decided he had had enough.
It makes you think about what's really important to you. Nate and Greg were very close. I mean, you think, Chip, when again you're 18 or 19, you do a lot of talking and about what you're going through, and they were like brothers. And when that happened to Greg, I think Nate felt like he was kind of by himself.
Northington packed his bags and left for Western Kentucky. With racial tensions rising on campus and all throughout the South, many people encouraged Hackett and Hogg to do the same.
I heard a lot, and I got a lot of calls about, man, they killed Greg Page. Are you gonna stay? Even around the campus, the word was that they killed Greg Page.
But before Northington left, he had a heart-to-heart with Hackett and Hogg that would make a big difference. Instead of encouraging them to follow his lead and head out of Lexington, Northington instead told Hackett and Hogg that they should stay.
We told them we would stay, and we had to try to stick it out. But many nights after that incident, we had Houston and I had our bags packed more than once, and Albert more than once. And I can remember sometimes the coaches coming to the dorms and sitting us down and talking to us, convincing us that we needed to stay. But it was pretty tough.
Over the years, Nate Northington has been reluctant to give an interview on his UK experience until now. I sat down with Nate to talk about Greg's death, playing in those games afterwards, and his own legacy. That part of the story is coming up when Turning the Page returns.
It's something I never talked to anybody about this before, so this is the first time.